Welcome to CCN Midday News. I'm your host, Captivating Christian, and here are some of your top stories for today, the 30th of June. The measure that would have required doctors who provide abortions to have admission privileges at hospitals within 30 miles of a clinic. In a ruling, the Supreme Court struck down restrictive Louisiana abortion law. Planet Fitness customer tests positive for the COVID-19, potentially exposing more than 200 people, health providers say. Trump engaging in a 3-week fury of communications with Putin last year, and the White House hid some of the calls. Mark Zuckerberg loses $7 billion in a day as top brands boycott Facebook ads. Senator Elizabeth Warren introduces nationwide eviction moratorium bill. And a Chicago man killed 2 teens after they asked how tall he was. And Trump's message to African Americans unhappy with monuments to slave owners: you have to learn history. Let's get to the news. The Supreme Court on Monday ruled that Louisiana's toughest restriction on abortions violated the Constitution, a surprise victory for abortion rights advocates from an increasingly conservative court. In a 5-4 decision in which Chief Justice John Roberts joined with the court's more liberal justices, struck down a law passed by the Louisiana legislature back in 2014. This law had required any doctor offering abortion services to have admission privileges at a hospital within 30 miles. Its enforcement had been blocked by a protracted legal battle. 2 Louisiana doctors and a medical clinic had sued to get the law overturned. They said that it would leave only 1 doctor at a single clinic to provide services for nearly 10,000 women who seek abortions in their state each year. Okay, so here's some light commentary on this particular story. So, big news for the pro-lifers. The Supreme Court has ruled in favor to overturn the Louisiana law, which they stated was unconstitutional, in a vote from 5-4, with Chief Justice Roberts joining the more liberal justices on the bench. This, however, is very interesting because, as we well know, for those of us that do know, that the Republicans have been, since Trump has been in office, doing an onslaught on the Roe versus Wade and finding any way that they could overturn it, even giving Trump the green light to add not 1 but 2 justices to the Supreme Court, one of which was taken from former President Barack Obama. So this is quite an interesting situation. Basically, for those of you who may have came in late, the law basically limits a doctor who performs abortion services to his or her practice has to be 30 minutes to the nearest hospital, and they have to have admission clearance from that particular hospital in order to perform abortions. This would limit the ability for hospitals for clinics to do abortions, or for those doctors to do abortion services, because usually they deal with different hospitals probably further out from their clinics, which would limit 1 doctor to having about 10,000 patients, which of course no one person would be able to handle 10,000 patients. So that law was overturned and deemed unconstitutional, which again is very interesting and some good news. Health officials say more than 200 people may have been exposed to the COVID-19 at a Planet Fitness in West Virginia. A patron who visited the gym back on June 24th tested positive for the coronavirus, according to the Monongalia County Health Department. The department advised the roughly 205 people who were at the gym between 9 a.m. and 3 p.m. on the day to quarantine for 14 days. Shares of Planet Fitness fell as much as 6% on Monday after Pittsburgh CBS station reported on the potential exposure. Planet Fitness says that it closed the Morgantown gym for cleaning by a third party and would reopen on Tuesday. The company also said on Monday that it was not aware of any additional customers or employees who were reporting symptoms. Okay, so here's my commentary on this particular story about Planet Fitness in the West Virginia area. I'm sure we're going to find out a lot of cases of people going to public places, finding out that they were infected and then infecting other people. My problem and issue with this whole thing is that they only talk about the 200 and some odd people that may have been in the gym that day, not also counting the 205 or 200 whatever people that was in the gym that day that actually went home or went to work or wherever they went and then possibly could have infected other people. And I think that's what a lot of the media is missing. That's what everybody else is missing. It's definitely what the president is missing. It's not just about the 200 and something people that person may have infected. We're talking about, okay, those 200 and something people then going out amongst their own families and situations at work or what have you, and then infecting far more people, which then grows it to an exorbitant amount. And that's the problem. I mean, we all want to get back to life and work, something that we're used to. But at what point do you just stop and say, hey, is it that important? I can do stuff at home. You can do push-ups or anything else at home. If the best way to defeat this, or at least get the numbers down, is to stay at home, then why not find an alternative way for you to work out? I don't know. I just think it's a bit of selfishness on part of many people, as well as, of course, the company wanting to make money. But since then, Planet Fitness has said that they have stepped up and taking a number of steps across all of their locations to enhance cleaning and sanitizing policies and procedures, extensive training for staff, and physical distancing measures to reduce physical touch points at the club and touchless check-ins as well. So we'll see if all this works, but again, if you're more concerned about the people's health as you should be as a gym, then you might want to even consider something else. But at the end of the day, it's all about the money. President Donald Trump engaged in unprecedented and previously unknown communications with Russian President Vladimir Putin during a 3-week period earlier this year, according to the sister network Voice of America. On March 30th, Russian leader Vladimir Putin and the U.S. President Donald Trump spoke by telephone, the first of 5 phone calls between the two over a period of 3 weeks, a fury of communications and unprecedented during Trump's 3.5 years in office. Only one of those 5 calls, according to research by the NCRM, was shared with the press. None were posted at the White House website, a serious diversion from previous practices. The NCRM reviewed titles over 800 news briefs on the White House's website, where the press office used to post details of all the telephone calls between the president and foreign leaders, known about as readouts. The White House appears to have been hiding readouts from calls between President Donald Trump and President Vladimir Putin. In fact, in a serious deviation where there are no readouts of any calls between President Donald Trump and foreign leaders that took place this year, posted on the White House's website for public access. In late September, the Kremlin announced no calls between Trump and Putin could be released to the public without mutual accord, another extreme deviation from prior practice. Notably, the Kremlin reportedly has released readouts of calls and other interactions between Trump and Putin and other Russian leaders when the White House has not, embarrassing the U.S. The American people, for example, only learned about Trump's Oval Office meeting with Ambassador Kislyak and the Russian foreign leader after the task photographer who was in the room published the photo. Okay, on this, I'm going to keep it as brief as possible. I'm going to try anyway. I'm not surprised. I believe Trump has been having communications with Vladimir Putin and hiding it from the rest of the nation because of the details in these conversations would expose a lot of what he's allowing Vladimir Putin to do and get away with, and possibly what the Russians may even have on the president, or maybe not even have, but even as far as the loans or the money that the Russian government has filtered through the Trump brand in order to clean it up, and then make him look wealthier than he is. So one hand washes the other, kind of, sort of, and it almost seems like this is where this is headed. I'm wondering what took the people this long to discover that the Kremlin would have readouts of their meetings, and of course the White House would not talk about them because it would then put the connection of the 2016 election fiasco right at the front door of the White House with their relationship with Russia. So then Russia then turns around and exposes the readout, and then the White House has to do cleanup. And so at this point, it's almost like a drip situation with this relationship that some of us know, we could see with our very eyes that something's going on here. Even when they had the meeting in the Oval Office where he said that he got rid of the FBI director because he was crazy and you guys could breathe easy. If he didn't have a relationship with the Russian officials, how would he know to say that? How would he know in saying that what benefit or what ease that would give them? So it's like obviously there was something going on, and there's this relationship between the two. We haven't found out the full extent of it because it is still somewhat secretive. But again, it's always a drip, and I'm here for the faucet not working. I don't want to call the plumber just yet. I would like to find out the rest of the information. Facebook has been facing a lot of flack lately for its refusal to take action against racial violence and the rampant misinformation around it. In the latest turn of events, top companies such as Coca-Cola, Starbucks, Hyundai, and Hershey, and several others have decided to pause advertising on the platform. The decision causes Facebook shares to tank more than 8.3% in a day, wiping off $56 billion from its market cap. Subsequently, the CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, who owns 400 million shares in Facebook, lost about 7.5 $4.2 billion from his personal wealth, dropping to fourth place in the global billionaires ranking. Where his estimated net worth is about $82 billion. He's the world's fourth richest person according to Bloomberg Billionaire Index. Mark Zuckerberg trails Amazon's Jeff Bezos, whose net worth is at $161 billion, and Microsoft Bill Gates, whose net worth is at $111 billion. The move by the MNC is part of the Stop the Hate for Profit campaign organized by the Anti-Defamation blah 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 blah. I'ma get it. Hold up. The move by the MNC is part of the Stop the Hate for Profit campaign organized by the Anti-Defamation League and the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, otherwise known as the NAACP. The nonprofits, like the Color of Change and other civil rights groups in the U.S. An official statement from the organizers of the campaign revealed that more than 100 brands have already signed onto the campaign, and they would be dropping ads from all Facebook-owned platforms for at least a month. Facebook's revenue is likely to be severely impacted if the boycott continues any longer. Okay, so here's my opinion on this Mark Zuckerberg losing money and then dropping from his Forbes list of being one of the top 3 richest people in the world to dropping down to number 4. Like boo-hoo. Okay, now that that's over, the real problem that I have with this company as Facebook as it is, it's supposed to be an open area for people, for everyone to express their views and just their views alone. You know, whether it causes them to get fired or what have you, that seems to be the thing. But the issue is where the political influences have come in, and finding out that Facebook themselves have been collecting money from these foreign adversaries who meddle in the political process, in the American political process, is a bit of a problem. So I wonder if actions are going to be taken towards Facebook at some point. As you can tell, the different companies have decided to drop out of, decided to drop their ads from Facebook, which caused Facebook to lose a lot of money. So I wonder if they start to bleed financially, will this bring about change in the way Facebook is actually handling it? Personally, I think Facebook is here for the mess, as long as they're making money. I think personally, Zuckerberg likes Trump. I really do. I don't think he has anything wrong with his problem, with his policies or anything of that nature. He's more like a Jared Kushner, just on the tech side of things. And I think he's helped usher in Donald Trump just as well as the Russians or anybody else. So, Colorado, like many other cities and states, implemented a temporary eviction moratorium in March to prevent people from losing their homes during the coronavirus pandemic. But the state's moratorium expired on June 13th, and the governor issued a last-minute emergency order that required landlords to give tenants more notice about any eviction, effectively delaying any evictions for another 30 days. This was a reprieve, but a temporary one and an incomplete one none the same. This grim reality facing vulnerable renters in Colorado and across the U.S., emergency eviction moratoriums are beginning to run out. And if they haven't already, the housing courts are going to start to reopen. The policies that allowed renters unable to pay their bills to stay in their homes are ending. But the coronavirus crisis is far from over in this country. And while states are reopening, millions have lost their jobs and their hours have been cut. The end of the moratoriums has experts of the housing advocacy predicting a tsunami of evictions that could lead to a spike in homelessness at the time when the best defense against this pandemic is to stay home. Against this backdrop, however, Elizabeth Warren is introducing legislation that would implement a nationwide eviction moratorium. The Protection Renters from Eviction and Phase Act would extend eviction protection for non-payment of rent for at least 1 year, starting from March 27, 2020, and which would also supplementally expand the current federal eviction moratorium, which will include most renters. The CARES Act, the massive stimulus package Congress passed back in March, imposed a 120-day moratorium on evictions for tenants in federally assisted housing or in homes with federal-backed mortgages. About 12.3 million of the 43.8 million rental units in the U.S., according to the Urban Institute. These protections are set to expire on July 25th, 2020. Warren's bill will keep up those safeguards in place for an additional 8 months and extend those benefits beyond those in federally backed housing to almost all renters. Okay, so here's my commentary on Elizabeth Warren's new bill. She wants to put forth this moratorium which helps to protect people from getting evicted. In defense of this bill, the previous temporary thing that was put in place with the whole stimulus package was giving tenants up to 120 days. But however, the 120 days will be expiring soon, if it hasn't already, for a lot of states as well as cities, which leaves people in a tough spot with no extra stimulus coming in. Some people have actually lost their jobs and won't be able to return due to downsizing purposes or what have you, with people trying to build a new reality around this virus and setting limitations on hiring or having people working at the same time, downsizing, like I said. So that causes a problem. With all this not taken into account, you left with people not being able to live, which will probably increase homelessness, unrest, and everything else. Do I think it's a good idea? I think it's a great idea. I do believe, however, that the government should have thought about that when they was putting together this stimulus package and maybe even increased the protections indefinitely until they felt the need, or at least a year, as this one does, for another 8 months, starting from March. So I don't know. I don't know if this will even pass, because as you and I both know, the Senate is conservative heavy, which basically means the Republicans run the Senate at this point. It may, of course, pass the House, but it has to pass the Senate in order to get to the president's desk. So we'll see how this goes. I think it's a good idea. A lot of people have been affected by this virus, this pandemic, due to the president's and others' lack of responsibility in ensuring that it didn't reach across the shore. but it's here now, and we have to handle it the best way we know how. So that's why I say it's important to have the elected officials in place that will do what they need to do to ensure that all of their citizens are protected and safe. Not just some, not just the ones that voted for him or her, but everyone at the end of the day. A Chicago man is accused of killing 2 teenagers at a convenience store this month after they asked how tall he was. Leroy Battle, age 19, reportedly opened fire on Jason Francis, age 17, and Charles Riley, age 16, in a back alley around 5 p.m. on the 20th of June after they and a friend walked home from buying candy at the store following a brief encounter with the suspect. The victims commented because since Battle is quite tall, they asked him how tall he was. Hoped to be as tall as he was someday, the deputy chief of detectives explained. And unfortunately, obviously, they will never see a full growth of those poor children. The teenagers, described as very good kids from really excellent families, were reportedly asked by their mothers to buy candy at the store. Francis was shot in the back and chest and left hand, while Riley was shot in the back and in the left leg. Both were taken to the University of Chicago Medical Center, where they were pronounced dead, according to the station. The third teenager was not struck. And there's a sad story out of Chicago. That man that shot these 2 teenagers, Jashawn Francis, age 17, and Charles Riley, age 16, around 5 p.m. on the 20th of June. Now, it is unclear. It is told that these young teenagers just asked the man how tall he was, and he then opened fire on them and wound up killing them. They wound up dying later at the hospital. 2 things with this. It's not even okay, not even a little bit. We don't know what was said other than they asked how tall he was, and he did this. Mental illness plays into this a bit. Pure recklessness in this. And also, as I stated a while back, I believe that a lot of people do not want progression. A lot of people don't want to be held, have a responsibility. They like the way things are, and they will do anything to disrupt and keep things the way that they are. So if that means going out and doing something as heinous as killing 2 teenagers because you happen to be really tall, and they just ask how tall are you, because they've probably never seen, other than a basketball player, an average person that, they can walk into a store and go, wow, that person's tall. And for you to then take it upon yourself to end these kids' lives, regardless of what may have been said, other than that, it's ridiculous. Definitely needs to be some accountability here, and this person needs to be tried to full extent of the law. I don't want to see this being put forth as in a C. That's why we need, and that's my other issue. I don't know if this to be true, but I'm a bit of, not a conspiracy theorist, but I think of other things that could possibly be the cause to this. And we do know that people are calling for police departments to be defunded. And there are people who will do certain things if paid or if told, hey, if you do this, we'll take care of your family and make sure, your child is, or, we'll do XYZ. And they're looking to protect their families or do whatever. And they'll do these things on behalf to show the rest of the world and the media, see, this is why we need to keep the police funding where it is, because see what they do to themselves, see what they do, just to keep this whole ball rolling. It's definitely quite unfortunate. I do hope the families get the justice that they deserve, and these young kings rest in peace, unfortunately. President Donald Trump appeared on the Fox News channel at a special on Sunday evening with Brian Kilmeade, where he discussed the recent efforts for protesters to take down statues and monuments of Confederate leaders, as well as American historical figures who had owned slaves. When Kilmeade asked Trump what his message was for African Americans whose ancestors were enslaved, Trump said that America had a great history and that people need to learn from that history. And if they don't understand your history, you will go back to it again. Kilmeade mentioned the past leaders like Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, who were brilliant but yet owned slaves. So how do we grow as a country and yet not forget our past? Kilmeade asked the president. And his response was, you have to understand history and you have to understand the culture. He said that we should not take down statues of George Washington, nothing like that. Half of our country is named after Washington. We have to remember the heritage and culture of our country. Trump continued, here's the problem that I have with a lot of these other people who don't even know what they're taking down. I see it happening on TV, and they are ripping down things that they have no idea what they're ripping down. But they started off with the Confederates, and now they go to Ulysses S. Grant. What is that about? This, and I saved this one for last for a reason. There's a story in the Bible, and I don't know the whole thing of the story, but there's a thing in the Bible, there's a writing on the wall, a message on the wall, and if you read it, you know what's about to happen. You are aware of what's going on to get out of Dodge or do what you need to do once you see the writing on the wall. And I think there's so many times that we've seen this writing on this wall that it's like, what more do you need to see? This interview was pure pandering to those same white nationalists, KKK, fear-mongering type of base that he has, that he panders to. This was all to them, every bit of it, all the words. Even if you read it, it spews of that. Prime example, when he asked, when the interviewer told him, hey, what about these leaders who were brilliant but owned slaves? The fact that you're telling people whose ancestors was brought here not by their own free will and enslaved to work for free, not for a little while, but for 400 years, that they need to learn their history, and if they don't choose to learn it, it will happen again. I don't know if you were basically telling you, hey, if you don't stop taking down monuments and disrespecting this country's heritage, because everything was our history and our country, and he only mentioned, of course, white men who happen to be praised as forefathers and brilliant leaders in this American journey. I don't know. I just find it to be like there's nothing else that needs to be said. Like, it is what it is. Wake up. He is definitely a racist, and he's the type of racist that if he has to work or somewhat be around or have a person of color around him or work for him, he will make sure he gives you the low level of the job, the lowest of the low job. Um, but as long as he doesn't have to see you, it's okay. If I only got to see you once every couple of months for a meeting, all right, I can deal with that. And that's just how I think this man operates. Who needs to learn the history lesson? Who needs the history lesson? I think he would need the history lesson more than any of us at this present moment. Because there's nothing historic and full of culture and pride about treasonous people who wanted to overthrow a government, lose, and then still get treated as if they've done this enormous feat and accomplished this great thing, when the whole fight was about rich white slave owners keeping their slaves. And of course, you made the poor white people feel like, well, at least you're better than them. You gave them a job to be the overseers of your plantations, but that was just to keep them from joining up with slaves and actually going, hey, we don't need to be treated like this. We need to fight back. That was all it is, and it continues to this day. So as long as he continues to pander to these people, which he is one, of course, I believe so, we will never get anywhere until November. So that's why I say, it's cool to get mad and get upset, but get mad and get upset and take that anger and go vote. Take that anger and go canvass. Take that anger and learn about these two candidates and decide for yourself which one represents you, which one looks out for your interests. And even if people say, oh well, it's the least of two evils, I'd rather be able to confront one evil and tell that evil, hey, nope, this is not what you're going to do. This is what you're going to do. This is what I elected you to do, than to sit back and allow one evil to just run amok and say all types of things and go, well, at least I know where he's coming from and I know he's honest. But you won't get anywhere with that particular person, because he won't do anything for you. Whatever he does, it's on stipulation basis. It's just so he can look good for a photo op, but not actually doing the work that needs to be done to actually correct the situation. So yeah, I think this was a total, I won't even say a misstep. It's just him. It's just him being him. And at this point, we need to stop sugarcoating him or trying to act like he's not what he truly is. And I think a lot of people just don't like the word racist, but I mean, it's just, again, call a thing a thing. If you act with tendencies of bigotry, then you are that. And it's just that simple. And there's nothing more to say or nothing more to add to it. It is what it is. But we need to wise up, understand it, get it, and vote accordingly, or do what we need to do to, even if you figure, okay, well, in my state, he may get reelected in my state, but what can I do to ensure that my local government may change? And you can do that by just voting locally and sticking to that, but still vote presidential as well. All right, later. Once again, thank you for watching CCN Midday News. Hope you enjoyed. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also hit that notification button so you will never miss another news update. Have a great day. Peace.